The Milken Institute Global Conference is the culmination of the important work our centers do throughout the year and helps inform our agenda going forward. Each of you participating represents extraordinary expertise, an ability to mobilize significant resources, and a sincere desire to be a force for good. And for that, we could not be more grateful. It is my honor to formally acknowledge and thank the group of people who make this event and all the great work we do possible, our supporters.
And now, please welcome our moderator.
Hello, everyone. My name is Linda, and I am so thrilled to be here today. I want to thank the Milken Institute for putting together an all-star panel today on a season of playoffs. So historically in sports, some standout players and a few teams have lent the full volume of their voices and platforms to social issues. But for the most part, the majority of leagues and clubs have largely avoided taking controversial social or political positions. Sports have been a place for tribalism, a revered form of tribalism that is based on a shared love of a city, a team, a player, or a proud belief that the opposing team was just not as good as them. I'm in Boston, and so some may suggest the Yankees, for example. But this year, with more urgency than ever, players, teams, and leagues have chosen to stand up for both human and civil rights. After the tragic killings of Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and too many others, including of Jacob Blake, athletes, teams, and leagues can no longer serve as a mere distraction from reality or single entertainment outlet. The new expectation requirement is illuminated how sports and society are interconnected. While the work of athletes, teams, and leagues will continue to play out over time, what is clear? Sports are not sitting on the sidelines in 2020. This, of course, is happening in the midst of a global pandemic that has disrupted the game and the business model, and even why we're all here together on a Zoom today to talk about it. In today's discussions, I'm joined by leading players and team owners to discuss how a global pandemic and a national reckoning with racial injustice need leaders in professional sports to elevate the physical health and social conscience of their teams, communities, and fan bases, and what this form of activism will look like going forward. This is a fantastic panel, as we have representation from all major sports here. I'll start by introducing today's speakers, and we can dive right into the topic. First, we have with us Todd Boehly, who is co-founder, chairman, and CEO of Eldridge. Todd is an owner of the LA Dodgers, the LA Sparks, and Cloud9. And congratulations, Todd, on the Dodgers making it to the World Series tonight.
Thank you.
We're also joined by Chris Paul, a 10-time NBA All-Star, 2-time Olympic gold medalist. Chris currently plays for the Oklahoma City Thunder and has served as the president of the National Baseball Players Association since 2013. I'm excited to introduce Kim Pagula next. He's the co-owner and president of the Buffalo Bills and the Buffalo Sabres. She's been the first female to hold both positions for an NFL and NFL team, and she worked as a member of workplace diversity in both leagues. Professional football player Richard Sherman is also with us today. Formerly of the Seattle Seahawks, Richard joined the San Francisco 49ers in 2018. A leader within the league, he is also an advocate off the field where he serves as a mentor and hosts a digital show to help young people manage their finances. And we have 2-time Olympic gold medalist, FIFA World Cup champion, and 6-time winner of U.S. Soccer Athlete of the Year award, Abby Wambach. Activist for equality and inclusion. Abby is the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Wolfpack, co-founder of Wolfpack Endeavor, and now a proud owner of Angel City Women's Soccer Team. Welcome all, and thank you for joining the conversation today. Chris, I want to start with you because the NBA has really been leading the way for all the leagues. And how has, can you talk to us a little bit about what it was like for you and the decision to play, and then how you really have been leading the team cohesively through this?
Absolutely. First and foremost, thanks for having me. It was a very long sort of off season or breaking season, I guess. But I think what we learned most about our league, our players, is how important and how strong we can be when we come together. Right? So it wasn't an easy decision. Obviously, our league stopped because of COVID concerns, and then during COVID, the social injustice was highlighted, and so a lot of players battled with the decision: should we play? Shouldn't we play? Are we taking attention off of the real issues? And we started to have real conversations, hard conversations. And what we realized is that the platform that we would have in the bubble, right, in Orlando, is like a platform that we never had before. And I think what made it, so cool for all of us is that there are stars in our league that if they feel a certain way on a different topic, no matter what it is, if they put that out on their social platforms, a lot of people will still see it. But in the bubble, a lot of players that may not get that notoriety, or people just know them for their basketball attributes and not who they are as a person or who they are in life. Um, they got a chance to use that platform, and I think our league will forever be stronger because of it.
Great. One of the things that was so one, it was thank you for your leadership, and one of the things that was really impressive as well is what you did with the jerseys. Can you talk to us about what your leadership was there and what happened?
Yeah, so when we realized that we were going to go to the bubble and everything was going to be magnified, right? The world was pretty much still, and all eyes were going to be on us playing. That idea just came up because of kids and the people that are watching our games, right? It was like we just want to magnify it just a little bit more, right? And I think what made it even better was that we had these different words that you can choose from, but we have guys in our league that are international players. So what made it even better is that the guys that wanted equality or am I next or all these different type things, they got a chance to put it in their native language, right? In their home language. And that really made, I think, our message a lot stronger. It made every player feel like they were a part of it. And as exciting as the games are, right? When they go into overtime or a guy hits a last second shot, all I could think about in these situations were my kids. Right? I have an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old. And my son, if he loved Damian Lillard or if he loved Jamal Murray, they had a message on their jerseys that will forever resonate with them more than just hitting a big shot.
That is beautiful. Thank you, Todd. You're part of a women's basketball team, and the women's teams, and I'm going to bring Abby in on this in a minute too, but women's sports are often leading the way on a lot of social issues. Can you talk to us about what happened within the WNBA?
Sure. I think very early on, Candace Parker came out and sometime in July with, I think it was "Change Has No Off Season" was the title of it, and in that she was really explaining how ultimately this is a year-round commitment, and the idea that we need to look at the fact that 80% of the NBA and 70% of the WNBA are African American, and you end up having less than 35% of front office within the NBA and the WNBA represented similarly. So I think she really used her platform in order to be highlighting the changes, not only that need to be made related to the Black Lives Matter movement, but also just gender equality. Another thing that we've been doing is we now sponsor and have been filming the Chelsea Women's Football Club over the course of the last 6 months or so. And we're really excited to watch what women's football and women's soccer has been doing internationally, and we think that there's a big opportunity in that as well.
Great. Abby, you've been a long time real leader in change, and what you've done for pay equality and just really taking a stance on a lot of social issues. I wanted to talk a little bit about what you've done, and then also sort of the broader question of it does seem like women are good about leading the way as athletes, and I wonder if you have some thoughts on why.
Well, I think, first of all, thank you for having me. I respect and admire so many of you all for what you do for raising up the voiceless, the folks who don't have the chance. You know, as an athlete, as a female athlete, as a gay female athlete, I found myself on the margins. And what I think is so important for people to understand why women fight so many of these battles, right? And this is not to say that men don't, but it's by necessity. When you don't get paid the same, when you don't get the same respect, when you don't get the same media attention, when you don't get and you don't get and you don't get, you have to get really creative and find innovative ideas and ways to be seen and heard, right? And I think that the WNBA is actually one of the most marginalized. If you look at the demographic of who makes up the WNBA, you've got brown and black women, you've got gay and straight women, and so a lot of folks, one of their big questions, and something that Sue Bird actually recently brought up on Twitter, is our women's national team is mostly white and successful, and it's not. People don't understand that is part of our internalized racism, right? As a country, as a world, of why certain elements or certain leagues or certain teams can find more success than others. For me, the WNBA, the way that they play, they are a walking, breathing. They're just activists, just by going out and doing their thing, right? And I'm in such respect of them. And you know, these social issues that we talk about, especially as a white person, is hard, is difficult, because as a person who went through the professional athlete system for many, many years, as a leader, as a captain, I think back to some of the decisions and some of the things that I might have been complicit in. And I think it's important as a leader in a space where we're trying to actually make real change. You know, women, in terms of being marginalized, don't have as much proximity to power, right? And especially Black women. So for me, when I'm trying to figure out and learn more about my internalized racism and even homophobia and sexism, I turn towards all the Black women in my life and watch what they do, read what they read. We've got a long battle ahead of us, but really it's just by necessity that women have to get creative and innovative, because truly when women go out and do something in a man's world, they are inherently activists.
Really great perspective there. Richard, you're joining us, and you've also been really a leader within the NFL on this, and you've also been a longtime advocate for bigger issues such as financial literacy and really helping educate people about, you know, how they can do better and how they can have more long-term success. How are you viewing, how are you using your platform right now, and how do you wish other people were also using their platforms?
Well, obviously, I'm doing my best to use my platform to educate. Financial literacy in the African American community is something that's rarely talked about. You know, it's almost taboo. So along with the Singleton Foundation, we did an adulting series, just talking about a lot of the basic foundational financial pieces that you need to survive in the world. Things that nobody wants to talk about: simple budgeting, how to write checks, how to pay bills, things that I think probably need to be taught in school that aren't. Obviously, there's a lot to be said about the way, you know, the things that our country is dealing with. But as an African American in this country, we've been dealing with it our whole lives. You know, if you're born Black in this country, you learn history a certain way, and it paints a certain picture of the way African Americans have been treated, you know, for the history of this nation up to this point. You know, and I think it's still an uphill battle. But I think, obviously there are more people using their voice and more people using their platform to make it known. Obviously, we're in a pandemic, so It's forcing everyone to sit down and watch the NBA and hear their message, hear how powerful these players' voices are, or how articulately they give their points. It's also forcing us to see the most evil side of people. And obviously politics with the election coming up, you're seeing both sides of it. So I'm using my platform to try to educate, to try to bring people together, to try to be the best human being I can be, and help foster a safe environment and a better environment for my kids when they're older.
Great. Kim, you had the perspective of being really involved on the NHL and the NFL. How are the leagues doing, in your opinion? What do you feel like they're doing well, and what could they be doing better?
Sure. I think at the league level, and I hope Richard feels this as well, there is certainly a better connection of the players and the league and the club in getting behind the social justice about what is actually right and what is wrong, and really trying to make sure that we are, as a league, especially the NFL, such a big platform, and that we are speaking the same language across the board. And the league has done tremendous. We've committed over $250 million, both from the clubs, from players, from the league, to against racism. Program we call Inspire Change. And every club that I know of has really been able to kind of take it upon themselves and then into their communities. I know at the Buffalo Bills, we have several of our players that really come together and raise funds and really trying to make an impact. And then even not just our players, but our staff and across our whole community, we have really tried to make sure that we look at making this a priority. And I think that the league, you saw in the first week, the league put out special kind of public service announcements. We had initiatives such as, end racism that is on every field at every club this season. The players were able to share someone who has been a victim of racism or police violence on their helmets. So trying to bring about a lot of awareness and trying to lead in this space. Like you mentioned, the NBA has done a wonderful job, but both football and hockey. Hockey itself has also put together a diversity and inclusion council across the league, across all the clubs, that includes owners, players, and staff members like myself. So we are all taking this very seriously and know that this is now a priority. And it reflects what's happening in our society. And that's what sports also is. It's a reflection of our society. And we want to make sure that we're aligned.
Chris, I'm going to go back to you for a minute, because you've been a voice that's been championing a lot of this, especially around Black Lives Matter. I listened to a press conference that you did in 2015 where you were really pushing this forward. How do you feel about people that are catching up now, and do you feel like enough is happening, and how do you feel about this moment?
I think it sort of goes back to what Richard was saying, is education, right? A lot of this stuff you don't know. You only know, what you know, and sometimes you don't learn these different things in schools, and that's why everybody being still and us actually being in the bubble gave us the opportunity to connect. As professional athletes, a lot of times we play games, and after the game, you just dap up and you be like, all right, everybody good, your family good. You don't really talk. And we actually got a chance to start talking, and guys are getting more educated, whether it's financial literacy, whether it's our history, right? I think in the bubble, we got a chance to really mourn the loss of John Lewis. A lot of times as athletes, or as kids, we glorify entertainers and athletes and stuff like that instead of people who really pave a way for us to even have the ability to vote. So whether it's a fad, whatever it is, the way that, myself along with other people have been championing HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, better late than never. And along with what Richard said, and even Amy, what she said about the WNBA, like our ladies, those women, we actually did a call together with our forever First Lady, Michelle Obama, where it was both leagues together, the NBA and WNBA. In my 15 years in the NBA, that has never happened, right? So we both leagues got on a call and we talked about the things that are similar, the things that are different. And as long as we continue to do that, I think we're on the right path.
Somebody from the audience, and thank you, audience, for sending questions in. Chris wanted to ask about the players who opted to not have a message on his jersey and the thought or the reasoning behind that.
You want to know why a player chose not to?
This is a question from the audience. It says, I'm curious to hear about the players who opted to not have a message on their jersey. What was the reasoning behind that?
You know, it's funny when that happened, and obviously being the president, there's 450 players in our league. I can't think of anything that we've ever decided on where everyone chose to do the same thing. But in this situation, I respected anyone's decision to not put a message. You know, some guys said that they were articulating their message. They didn't need it on their jersey, and I respected that. We had, I think, over 85% of the league who put a different message on their jersey. But anytime we make a decision, it's for the collective, but it's not mandatory by anyone.
Great, thank you. And Richard, I want to go back to you for a second. Can you think of an example? This is another question that came in from our audience of either teammates or front office or coaching staff displaying example of anti-racism. Have you seen anti-racism in practice within sports that has inspired you?
Honestly, I can't say anything specifically. I think a lot of sports and a lot of the locker room and a lot of the camaraderie of sports and the brotherhood of it, and I'm sure Chris can speak to this, is anti-racism. It's about togetherness. It isn't about being separate. It isn't about the color of your skin. It isn't about your religious beliefs. It isn't about your sexual orientation. It isn't about anything but navigating through a season and working towards a common goal. And I think it would almost be odd to see someone overly, trying to be overtly anti-racist in this sport when we've been so intermingled our whole careers. It hasn't been, hey, this black team and this white team, and now we're coming together. This isn't the time of segregation. Now, outside of locker rooms, outside of sports, there is still a lot of racism and bigotry. And so I think our teammates that aren't African American taking the initiative to wear the Black Lives Matter and to wear the End Racism shirts and to do their part to try to change the outside world's perception with their platform and their messaging is powerful. And I have seen that. I have seen my teammates go over and beyond to speak and to show their support for the movement and show their support for their teammates of color.
That's great. Thank you. Abby, have you seen acts of, and you've been really using your platform to encourage other people, like what you were talking about before, to learn and how to be a better advocate. Has there been an example within sports of anti-racism? This is a question coming from the audience. In any aspect that was inspiring to you of anti-racism, anti-homophobia?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the MLS actually, Landon Donovan's team in San Diego, one of their players who is an out gay professional athlete was assaulted and harassed on the field. A slur was slung his way. And this is like a week after something had happened with a racist slur that was slung one of the athletes' way. They decided that if anything like that ever happened again, that they would walk off the field and forfeit that match. And just a week later, it happened, unfortunately. And it tested this team, it tested their conviction. And Landon Donovan, the manager, part owner, he walked out. They forfeited that match. And for me, though it sounds trivial because we're talking about a game, this was a big game for them, right? This was maybe a playoff match game. And for an entire club to get behind the safety of its players, and specifically of its player in this moment, to protect their human rights, to protect their choice, to protect whatever it is, right? For me, the collective action of a team, and that's, in terms of what Richard was just saying, I think it's so beautiful because when you are in a team environment, it's hard to even see that there is any kind of racism or homophobia or even misogyny in my world, because you're all committed to this common goal and you kind of look past personality differences. But when you look on the outside and how what you do inside a team or a locker room can impact the world around you, not only does it make that one player feel safe, but it also makes the kid who's watching, who might be a gay boy, might be a gay teenager who's watching this team from the stands, and maybe he hasn't come out to his parents yet. Maybe he is wondering about maybe playing professional soccer one day and what that road or path or journey would look like for him. And watching this moment for that one child could be life changing, right? And that is essentially why I think so many of us athletes, yes, winning, we all got healthy egos, no question about it. We all want to win. We're competitors. But I think we all want to change the world and want to make the world a little bit better because of what we did on the field. We want to inspire and we want to make the world a little bit better than when we found it. And so for me, that's one specific thing that recently has happened. And Landon being a former U.S. national team player, captain of Team USA, for me, he's not a gay man. And sometimes it takes a straight white man to do and say certain things to get real attention and to make real change. And so having allies in every kind of social justice movement right now is super important.
That's a fantastic example. Thank you. Todd, a question came in for you that says the Dodgers have a diverse team. How does that play into the team dynamic?
Well, I think you'll see the fact that they all supported Mookie Betts just very recently when, Mookie just made the decision not to play and Clayton Kershaw put his arm around him and made it clear that they're all in it together. And, I think that the reality is, from our point of view, we've always thought that, diversity just makes for better decisions, makes better, everything about a team that's diverse is going to perform at a higher level. And ultimately, if you want kind of the world to stay together, equality is going to have to be, part and parcel of the trade. Because I just feel like, ultimately, it will strain to a point where the pressure will, keep it from moving forward. And, hopefully we'll never get to that kind of boiling point, but we've certainly gotten close. And I think, I'm excited to watch the Dodgers and the way they approach it. And obviously Dave Roberts, our manager, has been very active in all the Black Lives Matter stuff and be very vocal. And for us, we're super supportive of all that, especially, having the history with Jackie Robinson and all that he did and what he went through in order to, make it an environment that, a lot of people could follow. And having spent time with Don Newcomb over the years and listening to, what it was like to, have been experiencing time with Jackie and what they really were able to accomplish. It's mind numbing when you start to sit down and think about the complexity that they had to deal with every day, and the fact that they were able to accomplish so much. And obviously, I think if you look at the world in long periods of time, I hope that as media markets become more fragmented and voices become able to get platforms easier and easier and distribution costs come down, and teams continue to think about how to use their platforms, they're going to hopefully continue to lead the way.
I think that you brought up some good points there. And a lot of it also is not just, and from the stories that you're telling, it's not just words and sort of saying this is what we stand for, but there's been a lot of action behind these initiatives. And Chris, the NBA really took a lot of action-oriented steps, including you were really making sure that players themselves registered to vote. We're 2 weeks away from an election, and then also the idea of turning stadiums that were empty into polling places. Can you talk about the impact of that and the inspiration there?
Yeah, I think a lot of times because of our platform, a lot of things that we do are always highlighted. And When we basically made that decision to basically take a pause and stop while we were in the bubble, a lot of interesting stuff happened. I actually had a conversation with a lot of the African American players that played in the MLS, right? Mookie Betts and some of the baseball players reached out, and some of the NFL guys, and that's why it's great to hear from Abby and all this. And it was like the first time in my career that I felt like all the leagues were sort of on the same page, right? So everybody was sort of talking about what we can do together, and so what we wanted to do as far as action was is well known now, but we had less than 20% of our players who voted in the last two elections. And so how do we look if we're out here trying to, say do this, say do that, if we're not putting real action behind those words? So when we had a big meeting with all the players, I told the players, and I think as Abby said, we're competitive. So I think everyone in that room started looking at themselves, right? Like, man, am I registered? Did I vote? And I'm so happy that today that I can say I think we're at 97 or 98% of our players that are able to be registered. They are registered to vote. And so even though that's a big victory for us and we're excited about it, now the next test, we got to actually get out to the polls and vote. And we have guys that are actually going to be poll workers. And then what started happening too is guys were like, let's meet with the governors of all the teams. We had a meeting with the different governors of the teams, and we said we would like for all of the arenas to be polling sites. If not the arenas, then the practice facilities. And one of the coolest things that happened was J.R. Smith, who is like my brother. He's from New Jersey, and he reached out to the mayor and got the Prudential Center open as a polling place, right? So at the end of the day, we all get a chance to see that we're a lot more than athletes, right? We do have power, in that if we communicate the things that we would like to see, that we can really see change. And I'm glad to be a part of that body of players.
One of the things that I'm hearing from all of you is that this is a moment where there's really a connection across sports and across teams in a way that hasn't really been a focus before. So we had Fenway Park open this weekend for voting. We had over 4,000 people come through to vote. We haven't done that before, and this inspiration from the NBA and what you guys are doing and advocating and the messages that you're sharing are really reverberating through. And so I don't know if anybody else wants to comment on how this is what we're talking about in this panel is that this is an incredible moment in sports. And are there other ways that we can capture that it's really spreading throughout the country and these moments, these sparks that athletes and teams are doing? And can anyone else think of things?
I would love to hear from Kim.
Yeah, Kim, can you see any other examples of change sparking throughout the country because of what sports is leading?
Right. For me and for our club, what really has resonated well with us is that, we look at our players, so even our staff and people in our community, we look at our players as kind of like on this pedestal. They're the athletes. They're getting kind of all the accolades, and even our coaches. And we never sat down to discuss to see them as human beings. And we had these wonderful town hall meetings, and it wasn't just across football, but it was across all our staff in hockey, lacrosse, in our entertainment business. And we sat down and we got to hear from some of our Black players, our Black coaches, to learn and understand about the social injustices that they've kind of experienced throughout their life. And it really humanized who they were as people. And it was really, unfortunately, most of our staff are white, and there's a lot of males as well. And it really gave them an opportunity to see a different side of our players and our coaching staff. And I think it really made them look upon themselves as what can I do to be a part of ending racism, of helping lift up social justice. And I think that was really telling for all our staff. And it was something I know that was appreciated. And we've continued these kind of open forum talks, talking about racism and unconscious bias in the workplace. And we've been making this available across, like I said, all our sports and all our entities. And I would go too that this was a great opportunity for that connection of just not about sports, but about your community, we made it a priority as well. Same thing that you guys just talked about. Our hockey facility, KeyBank Center, was able to open up for actually training voter training for the staff on election day, as well as an early drop off spot. So utilizing different aspects of your organization to kind of help each other and lift each other up in doing the things that our society really needs us to do right now.
So this is all happening during a black swan event that is shaking sports business to its core, where because of the pandemic, the match day revenue is suddenly gone. Players are playing in stadiums that don't have the fans in them. This was not in anybody's forecast. Do you want to start talk about, what is this meant for the business of sports?
Well, I mean,
Is that
I guess
for
I
me?
can. No, you go ahead.
Yeah,
No,
you
you
can.
go, Richard.
Richard, why don't you start?
Well, I mean, on the NFL side, it's been really interesting because, we, unlike the NBA, we weren't in season when the pandemic hit. So we had a chance to actually go through. We were actually just ending our CBA negotiations when the pandemic hit in March, at least when it hit in the United States and became recognized by everyone. And it was such a crazy time because you have to have so much foresight. You have to try to have the foresight to understand that there could be volatility with the pandemic in terms of the revenue, and so our projections for this year stayed the same because you can't change the salary cap for this year once it's already established. But it's going to force teams next year to make some really really tough decisions if we continue on the path we're on and teams aren't having stadiums filled because that revenue the salary cap was projected at 220 million or so. It's conservatively projected at 175 now. So teams have been planning and planning and planning with the old salary cap projections in place. So I think it's going to be an interesting year next year once our projections come out around January to see the decisions the team has to make because our owner is saying they've lost $100 million on top of the $100 million that they have to spend on testing and making sure that this is a safe work environment that we're able to come in every day in order to function. So it's really been a strain on the teams and the players. The players, some players have opted out, obviously, and won't see much of their check. We're going through the season now, and we're having different kind of outbreaks on different teams. So the fear of forfeiting a game for teams is there, and if that happens, guys will miss checks. So I think both sides are feeling a bit of the financial strain.
I think that it's a really important point that you're bringing up because I think a lot of people think about it in terms of the impact on the teams themselves, but it really does impact financially the players as well. And Todd, you're in a situation where expenses are up and revenues are down. How are you looking at what's going on with the pandemic and the impact on sports?
Well, obviously, we look at it, as you have multiple tiers of revenue, right? You have, the in-stadium experience, you have the sponsorship, you have the merch, you have all that stuff that, effectively has come to a screeching halt. You still continue to have the media dollars, and ultimately there was an agreement reached between the players and our league and in baseball that was allowed everyone to move forward in a way that I think there was more alignment between the players and the owners than the media would have suggested. I think they came through it and collaborated well. I think for us, we're starting to think a lot about come March, what's the proper testing protocols and how are we going to get fans back in the stadiums and how can we test at scale, and as opposed to kind of be led just specifically by all the healthcare folks within the communities, also think about how can we lead our way out? How can we have testing protocols that get people safely back into the seats, even if we have a vaccine? Because we think that this is now going to be in our backpack of risks, and we're going to have to figure out how to deal with it. And hopefully, quick, cheap testing is going to be one of the many tools that we have, and we're seeing that develop faster and faster. So, our hope is that we don't expect to be back to normal next year by any means, but we would expect to be back to normal by 2022. And if that means we're going to have to plug some capital holes in order to carry the team forward, the good news is discount rates have fallen so much. So, capital's gotten cheaper to be able to access. And I don't think the terminal values of these clubs have changed as a result of the pandemic. So ultimately, I think you're just solving for some short-term challenges, which, short-term challenges are just, for us at least, part and parcel of kind of the fact that we're all very human. But I think the long-term, proposition of what the teams and the sports and the fans offer, I think we're now experiencing fans, and we had them in the NLCS down at the new fantastic Globe Life Stadium in Texas, and albeit the fans were only about 20%, from seeing an empty game, having been to Dodger Stadium with the Brewers where there was no fans, and the sound really was almost metallic and echoey and kind of creepy. To have 20% fans, it felt certainly like there was at least 30 or 40% energy versus the fact that it was 20% fans. And I think the fans were doing a great job. So, I think we're looking for 2022 to start to feel normal again while we work through this in 2021.
Chris, you played an entire season without fans. What was that like for you as an athlete?
It was an entire season. It was it was
entire
well,
part.
no, it was different because we had stopped, right? And so like Richard was saying, our situation was very different because we had to make a decision first and foremost that we were going to go into a bubble, and we didn't take all of our teams. Right? So there were 30 teams, and we only decided to take 22 teams to the bubble. So that was a whole nother conversation that we had to have amongst our players because, those 8 teams that weren't coming to the bubble were like, well, am I going to get paid? Right? If I'm not playing games, am I going to get paid? And that's where the union and all us players talked, and we made sure that everyone was accounted for. The 22 teams were going to finish the season and representative of the whole league. And we played an 8-game season and then playoffs. And that was unbelievable. And thinking about how we basically started from scratch, built everything between our players, the union, and the NBA. It was amazing to be able to crown a champion. And as soon as that was over, everyone's saying congratulations. But now the hard part starts because now we got to try to figure out how we're going to do a full season given the circumstances. And I'm open to any suggestions. We're working on that right now. But our salary cap this past season was 109 million. And anyone who knows professional sports knows that general managers and teams, they plan for this stuff, years in advance. So these are the discussions that we're sort of having now of what is the salary cap going to be, because our fans are important to not only the game, but obviously to our revenue. So a lot of questions out there, and we're answering them in real time.
So you played the beginning part of the season. I'm sorry, or it felt the winter feels like 2 years ago.
It seemed long. Yeah, it seemed long.
You played this summer without fans versus playing with fans. What was that like for you?
It was different. It was very different. And I guess for me, being the president of the union, I was in the locker room actually because my game was actually the game where everything stopped, everything shut down. But I was on the phone with our executive director in the locker room before the game. And the next day, we were actually going to start playing games with no fans. And for it to happen the way it happened, that was crazy in itself. And then, to go to the bubble, it was a lot of work that went into it. It was tough. It was tough. Being away from, my family. I missed my daughter's birthday. But at the same time, I'm getting a chance to play to the game that I love. For the young players on my team, I think it helped them to a certain extent because in the bubble, it was just sort of the same conditions. You didn't have fans yelling at you or whatnot, telling you, miss this shot, miss that shot. So that sort of helped maybe some of the young guys in the playoffs. But I tell you, there's no experience like the playoffs with the fans. Right. any player who's played professional sports knows that energy from the fans, there's nothing like it. Our game still survived because there was energy, and to be able to do the virtual seats and just the way that they shot our game. But no, we definitely miss the fans and can't wait to get the fans back in there.
You know, it's interesting because when there was such this drive in the pandemic to figure out how to get the sports restarted, part of it was a feeling that, you know, people really need to watch this, and the ratings have not been the same for any of the leagues as before. And there are some people, which I personally don't agree with, are saying, well, this because there's a social justice thing, but I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the energy is different without having fans there. You know, that they're in the viewing experience of what we're used to, and even through the television, the experience of the games is so much different. Kim, you were talking about this as well, that you, echoing what Todd said, that you were in some stadiums that were completely empty and playing in other stadiums where there were some fans.
Yeah, no, I would not have thought that just, a few thousand fans would really make a difference in a 70,000 seat stadium. But when we played Miami, it was our first game that was allowed to have some fans. They had about 9,000 fans in attendance, and it was a dramatic difference. And it just made you realize what that live audience really does for the whole atmosphere of a game. And I know that our players who were in the state of New York, we do not have fans here in New York, and our players, I know, really miss that aspect of the game. It's just kind of part of the whole identity of a team is, being able to play in front of your hometown crowd, especially now when you're having a good season. So certainly that has really affected it. And the viewership, we've talked about, viewership being down across all the leagues. And I do think a little bit of it is the pandemic, as well as the election coming up this year. And then what, our challenge and our concerns are that going forward, people have started now, because they've been away and not able to go to games, they've started to create different habits. They're doing different things. They've got different concerns on their mind, or they may have different, economic circumstances. So this is something really that we're going to be really mindful of going forward and trying to figure out how long will this last. But getting fans back is certainly one of the key priorities for the business of sports.
I'm going to go back to the changing habits in a second, but Abby, women's soccer was the first league to really go in the bubble and pull it off, and really setting an example of how it worked. You're getting this, you're new in this team. How are you looking at this? How scary is this for you, for Angel City?
Well, I think that, first of all, just to know, the NWSL is actually up 490%. The only league, the women's WNBA final was also up, I think, by 15% viewership. So our league has actually thrived during this time, which is, I don't know how, but I'm proud of that. And Angel City FC, the club that is going to be starting in 2022 out of LA, this is an interesting time, right, to start a club, a franchise. But for us as owners, we are trying to learn everything that we can. The NWSL was the first league to create a bubble situation and be successful at it. And as a league, as a team, building a team, it's just trying to figure out, okay, we know that this pandemic will eventually go away. We're going to have to put tons of protocols in place, but this can offer us an interesting opportunity, right? As athletes, we're problem solvers. I'm not going to obsess over, and I know that there's economics, and I know that there's like a lot of stuff going on, but if we are in a position that in 2022, when we are fielding our first team, we can, in some ways, watch and see what is happening, see what's working for other professional sports and clubs out there, and try to replicate that, right? So I feel not only engaged and excited about this opportunity to be a part of the first primarily owned female sports program and franchise. But at the end of the day, too, we're going to just keep solving the problems. It doesn't matter to us. We're going to take the field in 2022. And the way that we're trying to innovate what professional sports ownership looks like, we're treating it like a startup. And I think that at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we're crossing every bridge when we get there, watching what the WNBA is doing, watching what the NBA is doing, watching what the NFL is doing to see what works and to see what doesn't work.
It's exciting to look at a team as a startup and that you're sort of coming in about the worst possible conditions and that is so you can really plan. You're already that's your baseline, and so there's a lot of upward potential from there. With the idea that Kim brought up of people changing their habits during this pandemic, how concerned are if anybody wants to pipe up here, how concerned are you about people changing their habits or sports taking a different role in people's lives? Do you feel like this is just because there's a lot of stress that's going on right now in people's lives? There's a lot of there's so much other stuff going on, or do you think that it's that audiences will come back? What are your predictions?
I mean, I think at this time there's just so many competing sports going on at the same time that have never competed at the same time.
Right.
You have football going on. You just had the NBA championship happen. You have baseball. You have the World Series going on. You have the election going on. So I think the focus may just be split. It's hard when an NBA Finals game is on, then you got football on at the same time. You're not gonna have everybody sitting at one or the other. You know what I mean? People are gonna pick one and they're gonna sit there and they're gonna watch that. But there is also that anxiety. The anxiety, that the angst, the depression, the nervousness. People are trying to keep themselves busy, trying to get their minds off of what's going on. So I think just sitting in front of a TV screen isn't what people want to do, especially with the amount of time that kids are spending on virtual school. Virtual education is an issue. So I think, people are sitting there in front of a screen so much that they're probably just going out and getting more active, and using their phones or using whatever other way they can to keep up with their sports teams. I think I don't know if it's anything to be concerned about, because once people get back to the day-to-day grind of going back to a 9 to 5 and grinding out a week or grinding out 40 hours or 60 hours in overtime and want to just sit there and take their minds off, I think football will still, sports in general will still be that release and that avenue to give them.
Great. I hope I agree with you on that one. I have a great question from an audience member. It says, for all the panelists, we've heard the word platform a number of times. What does platform mean to you? Is it a responsibility, an obligation, a choice? And does that platform base change their intended message? Chris, do you want to start with that one?
I will. I think platform for me, it can't be forced. It has to be a choice. Everyone always talks about if they're a role model or not. I always speak from a perspective of kids, right? Because even though I'm a professional athlete, up until probably a couple years ago, I think my son thought I was sorry, right? Like, for real, I think my son didn't think I was that good because there's other players that he likes, right? There's other athletes that he's a fan of. And it's one of those things that I always think about, who are my kids watching, right? Like, at the end of the day, when my son was young and I played with DeAndre Jordan and Blake Griffin, if he was doing something wrong, I'd be like, Chris, I'm gonna tell DJ, right? And he would stop. He would really stop. And it's one of those things where it has to be a choice. It has to be a choice. So the platform that we have, I take a lot of responsibility with it, right? Because I always look at it as there may be another player whose kids look at me for some type of inspiration, whatever it may be, right? So this platform, you have to be responsible with it and look at it as an opportunity. Even though basketball, football, soccer, whatever it may be, have given us this opportunity, right? It can be more than that. It can be more than that. And you don't have to just shut up and dribble, kick a ball, or throw a football or whatnot. You can really have a positive impact on people's lives.
Not all
And
dads have the same tool.
I'll add to that really quick. I think that, the shut up and dribble thing, the reason why people say that is because whatever you're saying is not what they want to hear. And one thing I know that's true about all athletes is that they have figured out a way to find their way, to crawl, to scrape to the top, right? So all of these professional athletes that we're talking of, like Richard and Chris and LeBron, these guys who have made themselves into the successful men, pro athletes, business entrepreneurs that they are, it's because, and when we speak, we are speaking based on our life. We're speaking based on having traveled the world, seen all other cultures, seen the way marginalized people have lived, right? So when we speak from our experience. And that is why the platforms that athletes have are so important, because they speak truth from what they've seen. That doesn't mean I think that everybody will agree with us. It just means that truth and what we are always trying to say is based from the experience that we've lived. And I just appreciate all the athletes that take the platform that they have, because I think about that kid who looks up and wonders what they want to be. And even if they never find their way into professional sports, because we also understand statistics, and statistically not many of them will rise to that level. But if that can instill in them a belief in themselves to be bigger, to work harder, to make the world a little bit better, I mean, that is why the platforms that professional athletes have are so important. And I think it's why every professional athlete, whether you believe you deserve to say something or not, or you have anything to say, we have to collectively come together. And I think that this pandemic, this bubble, has been this beautiful connection, the connecting point, like Chris was talking about, to bring some of these leagues together so that we can have one common voice.
Yeah, what she said.
Yeah, that's also such a great way to look at it, and a reason why I also believe that the supporters will come back, because we get to cheer for people who are the best in the world, and they've worked incredibly hard, and there is such a meritocracy to sports where you've worked and pushed it to become the best in the world at what it is that you do. Richard, do you have any other comments on platform?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Chris and Abby said. I mean, it's a choice. It's an incredible opportunity to have a tremendous impact and influence, even if it's just one kid, one person, one human being whose life you change in any way. Whether it's just putting a smile on their face, whether it's just giving them a break from their day-to-day grind, whether it's you going to a hospital and talking to a kid who may be dealing with a very tough illness, and just looking for some happiness and a joy. And I think when you're talking about your own kids, I think it is important to know who they're watching, know who they appreciate. I mean, my son wants a Jimmy G jersey, and I'm like, dang, your dad's pretty, but you gotta appreciate who they appreciate, because they just see you day to day.
Right.
You're just a human being. You're just a guy. You're just a Joe to them. And, they see these other guys do things and they're, they see it in a different light. And I can appreciate that, but I can also appreciate the quality of people that they follow and how those people maneuver. And I think as an athlete, when you think of the way your kids look at people, you think of yourself and you're like, hey, I always want to put this message out. I always want to keep it this way and keep this image, because I want, if somebody else's son or daughter or husband or brother is looking at me as an example of how to do things, I want to try my best to give them the best example I can. We're all human beings and none of us are perfect. So we'll all fail to do it, to the highest level. We're not robots. But I think that's what makes it pretty cool, this bubble and everything, because you're getting to see humanity. You're getting to see beyond the jerseys, beyond the helmets, beyond the field, the pitch. You're going to get to see everything. You get to see human aspect of athletics. And I think that's what makes it powerful.
It is, and you are all examples of people who are using their platforms for a lot of good right now, and I'm grateful for that. And one last question came in, actually for Todd and Kim, that says, as team owners, can you share what fans have to look forward to? What can we expect? Kim, do you want to start?
What fans have to look forward to.
Yeah.
For us, we've got a huge kind of what we call Bills Mafia here in Buffalo. And, although we want fans and they want to see the game and the athletes, I think it's just kind of what they're looking for is that connection. So game day means so much to so many people. It means kind of connecting with your family. It means coming together, someone maybe to celebrate something. The tailgating, just the process that you go through on game day. I mean, I've got things that I do on game day. So I think fans are just looking to come back and not just watch the game, but get to experience the whole pathway that they come through and they go through and they get to experience, and all those things that mean so much to us as humans. The connection with their family and friends, the activities, just the hope that teams inspire, the celebration that teams can have. So I think that's what fans are most hoping to get back when they are able to get back to stands.
This has been an extraordinary conversation. The title of this was Redefining Sports in Challenging Times. And I think one of the things that I'm taking away is that in these challenging times, it has really brought athletes and teams and leagues together in a way that hasn't happened. And, it took a reckoning in terms of social justice and a pandemic to push us here, but maybe things won't go back to exactly the way they were. And maybe that's a good thing, from what I'm hearing from each of you today, and how you're using this time and this time of these challenging times, this crisis time, to push things forward. So thank each of you. I'm so grateful to each of you for this really thoughtful conversation, and you are each really tremendous leaders. I've really gotten so much out of this. I'm really grateful, and thank you to the audience. You sent in great questions throughout that I peppered through. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.